Greetings, everybody. I'm so excited to be with you. I want to make sure that you are tuned in. If you'd hit the share button, come on in. I am definitely not Pastor Christian Smith, but I am more than honored to be connected to what we call the faith community. And if you would, much like I am, if you'd hit the share button, tag at least 10 people. And if you would not just tag 10 people, if you would share with 10 people. And if you would start a watch party, we'll be right into this session. I'm so excited to be with you. I can't tell you how excited I am. I'm totally blown away, and I'm grateful for the honor and opportunity to be in this space called the faith community. As you all are coming in, let us know where you are tuning in from, and let everybody you know that the faith community is on for daily bread. I am sharing with my circle as we speak. I'm starting a watch party, and I'm encouraging you to do the same. I see our senior pastor and founder has joined us, Pastor Christian Smith. If you are not following him, shame on you. You need to make sure that you're following him on every platform. I see all of you that are coming in. Keep hitting, keep sharing, and we'll get started with Daily Bread momentarily. Let me share with my page. Let me know where you're coming in from so I can speak to you, so that I can inspire you, so that I can engage with you. Daily Bread has begun. Join me now. All right, I have started my watch party. I hope you all are ready to jump into this. I'm honored because this platform is called the Faith Community. This ministry was planted over 2 years ago by its founder, Pastor Christian Smith, and his lovely wife, Pamela Smith. And it has allowed people of all races, of all platforms, of all belief systems to be able to come in and be impacted to see God in a way that they have not been able to see him in other spaces of faith. And because of that, I have partnered with my brother and my friend, because I believe in what he's done, he is doing, and continually does. And I'm honored to be able to be on this platform to give you what is known in this space as a homebound homily. As you realize, we are still in quarantine, and the homily is just a short prose, a short document, a short writing that inspires you in a small setting. And I have a 15-minute time frame, and I want to get right into this message. If you start your sharing, I see you all coming in. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning. Thank you for tapping in. I'm excited. I'm appreciative, and I'm ready to go to work. For these few moments that I have with you as you keep sharing, I want to take you to 2 Samuel chapter 11 and one verse. 2 Samuel chapter 11 and one verse. I'm reading from the New International Version, and it reads, "In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem." It says they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. For the few moments that I have in this homebound homily, I'm coming to you with simply one thought: essential workers. Essential workers. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who've tuned in, whether you realize it or not, today actually marks 5 weeks where our stay-at-home edict has been in effect. It blows my mind to realize that as of Sunday, March 15th, we were officially in our last time moment where we as believers could legally gather to a structured space and place called sanctuary to worship our holy God. And sadly, what psychologists would refer to as cabin fever has pushed many people to the brink of frustration. And as a consequence, on this past Friday, I hate to say it, my current governor in my beloved state of Georgia, Brian Kemp, and several other governors with poor leadership skills began opening in their cities what they called extended essential business list. Ultimately, this list was comprised of vices that ultimately oppressed predominantly black and brown people all over the world. We who inhabit this space realize that this was not about being concerned about us as humanity. It was about capitalism. It was about oppression. And it was about putting a certain group of people in a marginalized place. Yet, if we perform a more careful autopsy on the attitudes of Americans during this quarantine, it would not render us without a pulse as a result of cabin fever. But contrarily, a seasoned forensic investigator would surmise that we are figuratively killing ourselves because of an overwhelming amount of American arrogance. Those of us who live in the land of the free and the home of the brave have become so accustomed to waging war, so accustomed to mitigating mayhem, so accustomed to interceding on international issues and capitalizing on capitalism, that we have no source of reference for being subjugated to the directives of people beyond our borders. Therefore, to minimize the corona curve and marginalize the increase of COVID-19, the stay-at-home mandate is ultimately a benefit to our lives and our environment. Yet, I found out that there are some 14 essential workers that do not have the option to stay at home as a result of being in the spring of circumstances that have arisen during this pandemic. Necessary individuals to our overall health and welfare range from healthcare workers to public health workers, from law enforcement to agricultural workers, and from transportation experts to financial service representatives. And I believe that although we must do our part to stay at home, please don't misunderstand me. I am not encouraging you to go out and get your hair cut, to get a tattoo, or do any of those other things. I believe that this is necessary. But I'm partnered with the fact that I do not believe that adding hair salons and tattoo parlors to the essentials list is prudent. And I'm confident beyond all doubt that we would all be left to gasp if we found out that if somebody in your family got sick and had to be rushed to the hospital, if you needed groceries, you needed collards, or you needed tomatoes, or a crime broke out in your neighborhood and you needed a police officer, if you found out that an essential worker made the decision to stay home during the height of their responsibility, you would be totally blown away. And as I was tossing my homiletical ball around in the backyard of biblical history, it crashed through the window of 2 Samuel chapter 11 into the estate of King David. And when I went into this space with my ball, I was in a circumstance where I rested assured that David found himself under quarantine. But he was an essential worker. Whether you realize it or not, in this circumstance, David is the king. He is the commander in chief. He's in a circumstance where, unlike our current times and circumstances, the commander in chief did not hide behind the walls of the White House. He was on the front line. And just like you would be if a doctor, just like you would be if a police officer, just like you would be if a agricultural specialist decided to stay home, these people are aghast because all of a sudden, David is now at home. With all intents and purposes, there's wartime pandemic going on. While the rest of the nation was under quarantine, while the women of the country were practicing social distancing, the men were essential workers to the safety of the nation. And unlike our present day, David decided to cash in on an option that should not have been optional to him. And in the most unimaginable way possible, the Bible states that David decided to trade in his essential worker status to leverage a stay-at-home edict that he was exempt from employing. I believe that 5 weeks into this quarantine is prime time for each of us to evaluate the essential status of the work of our purpose. because you have not been placed in the midst of an outbreak in a world that has been contaminated with fakes, with phonies and frauds, for you to stay at home from your purpose when God has made you an essential worker to authenticity and power. I'm talking to you. You are essential to cure the desire for so many to become capitalistic while being unable to breathe the oxygen of reality and compassion. You can't stay at home from your purpose, because you're essential. You're essential. That you can't distance yourself from traditions that never transform, from habits that never help, and from issues that never get resolved. You can't stay at home from your purpose, because I'm encouraging you. You are essential. And in the last moments of my homily, I want to help you realize that unlike David, staying at home as an essential worker of purpose is more detrimental to the purpose and will of God for your life than anything else. And in these last few minutes, you must realize that you are an essential worker of purpose, because you can't stay at home. Because if you stay at home, a few things will happen. Your urgency will be undermined. I'm still in 2 Samuel chapter 11. Your urgency will be undermined. What do you mean? It states in verse 2 of 2 Samuel chapter 11 that one evening, you really don't have to go any further than that. It says one evening. This helps you understand that his urgency was undermined. You've heard in marketing in past days and in past years, the military used to state that we do more before 6 a.m. than most people do all day. Whether you realize it or not, the impetus behind that marketing strategy was about David. He was a man of war. He was the best warrior. He was at the top of his class, and he did most of his successful work in the beginning and the height of the morning. He did it while it was yet day, because David realized when nighttime came, no man could work. But here he is outside of his essential worker status, trying to cash in on an opportunity to stay at home. And all of a sudden, his urgency was undermined, because it says one evening. You know what it's like to put yourself in a position that you know God has purposed you to do greater, but you've put the morning of your life on the back burner, and now you've been connected to the syntax one evening. You know that God called you in your 20s, in your 30s to start the business, to operate the family, to develop the ministry. And because you decided to stay home when an outbreak was calling your name, you are now connected to the terminology one evening. And I'm challenging you today. You cannot, in this homebound homily, think that your work is not essential. You've got to get up, because at night no man can work, and God is calling you. God is challenging you. He's giving you time to get your circumstance in order, because you cannot undermine the urgency of God. So not only can you not afford to stay at home because the urgency of God will be undermined, but the innocent will be indicted. I said the innocent will be indicted, because verse 2, still right there, it says, from the roof he saw a woman. He says, from the roof, David saw a woman. This is a good time to share, because this message isn't just for you, it's for your neighbor. This is a good time for you to recognize that David had a vantage point that allowed him to see what he should not have seen. He convicts a woman of a circumstance that rests with her for the rest of history. Many people have misunderstood this passage and tried to put a bad light on Bathsheba, because it says, we have interpreted to say that Bathsheba was bathing on her rooftop and she was teasing David. But the passage says that David was on his rooftop, and from his vantage point, he looked into her house. And what happens is, because of David being out of place when he was supposed to be an essential worker, he finds himself indicting an innocent woman. She's operating in her religious operation. She is doing her spiritual duty. She's finishing getting cleaned up from her period and her menstrual cycle. And she is now, whether you realize it or not, the people who were essential workers under normal circumstances would sign power of attorney over to the king. In the case that they didn't make it back home, David's responsibility in his position of power was to take care of the women of the men he was fighting with. And because he's taking off and operating as a stay-at-home edict, he's standing in a position to create a person in an innocent space to be indicted for wrongdoing. And how many of us have indicted people in our lives for wrongdoing simply because we weren't doing the essential work God called us to do? You've got people still caught in adultery. You've got people still operating in abusive relationships. You've got people outside of the will of God. You've got people on the verge of committing suicide, and they are waiting on you to become an essential worker. But because you've decided to check in as a at-home, stay-at-home individual, you are indicting innocent people. Realize that when you are outside of your purpose, when you are outside of your will, you are hanging people up from the deliverance that God has for them. God does not answer direct prayer. You are the answer to somebody's miracle. You are being sent by God to deliver people out of their circumstance. And if you won't stand up and be an essential worker, if you won't stand up for the cause of the kingdom, if you won't do what God has purposed you to do, you indict innocent people. So not only is the urgency of God undermined, and now you indict innocent people, thirdly, the willing are wiped out. In verse 14, it says, in the morning. Isn't it a transition? Before he was one evening, and now when he's getting ready to wipe out the willing, it says in the morning. He got up when he got ready to cover his wrong. He now wants to go and make sure his tracks are covered. And what he does is allows this woman's husband to come home from being an essential worker. And he tells her husband, now you go home and sleep with her so you can cover my tracks. And because he's so loyal to be an essential worker, he knows that there's an outbreak, there's a pandemic. He says, I can't do it. I'm loyal to what God has called me to do. I'm loyal to who you are. And in the morning, David writes an edict and makes her husband deliver it back to Joab and says, put him on the front line. Get this, put him in the place that I should have been in. And how many of us wiped out people that we should have already been in their place? We put people on the front line to get destroyed. We put the blame on other folks. It was my mama. It was my daddy. It was my friends. It was my circumstance. It's not your mama. It's not your father. It's you, oh Lord. You're standing in the need of prayer. And don't keep wiping the willing out. Stand up and be an essential worker. And I believe that there are some people watching me who have hearts of praise, that have hands of worship, that have thumbs of congratulation that says, I'm not going to wipe out the willing any longer. I'm going to do what God has called me to do. I'm going to operate in the space God has called me to operate in. I will not be an essential worker that's standing on the sideline wasting time. So finally, the reason that you've got to be an essential worker is because the damage is never deleted. I said the damage is never deleted. I only got 15 seconds to get out of here. The damage is never deleted because in chapter 12 of 2 Samuel, you'll read that Nathan comes to David. The prophet says, hey, if one man had 100 sheep and there was another person with a wee lamb over here, and that man with the 100 sheep decided to take his one wee lamb, what should be his outcome? What should be his edict? And David stands up on his throne and says, bring him to me, I'll kill him. Who dare treat somebody that way? And Nathan looks at him and says, you are the essential worker that took somebody's essential lamb. And I want to help you understand that in verse 10, it says this, it chilled me. The sword will never leave your house. Realize that when you refuse to be an essential worker, you change a bad habit into a genetic outbreak. Good God Almighty, you will change a bad habit into a genetic outbreak. He made one bad decision that started a bad habit, and it went through his gene pool for the rest of his life. And I'm challenging you. Don't force generations to pay for your laziness. Become an essential worker because God has called you to not just stay at home. It is not your purpose to just watch every outbreak of Netflix and every binge of Netflix. It's not for you to sleep on every pillow in the bed. It's not for you to eat every meal in the refrigerator. God has given you time to write your book, to develop your purpose, to write your business plan, to grow your wealth, to eliminate generational curses. This is your moment. You can no longer stay home. You've been designed to be an essential worker. And I'm challenging you in this moment, this 15 minutes of daily bread, I'm asking you, I'm imploring you, I'm pleading with you. Don't stay home in your purpose, but be on the front line as an essential worker for God's plan in your life. 15 minutes is up. I'm out of my time. I enjoyed that. I hope it blessed you the way it blessed me. I'm so excited to be on this platform called the Faith Community. And the faith community is changing lives all over the world. And because you are here, if this message blessed you, you may be looking for a church home. You may be looking for Christ. You may be looking for a change. You may be looking for a community of believers who will challenge you to be on the front line. It's simple. We don't want you to just be a watcher. We want you to be a worker. And if you would, text right now, disruptive. Text disruptive to 31996, and you will no longer just be a watcher. You can be a worker, because Senior Pastor Christian Smith wants to be your pastor. We want to be your church, and we want to help you stay on the front line. On top of that, if this message, if this platform, if this medium has blessed you, I want you to be able to do one of the highest forms of worship. And one of the highest forms of worship is to be able to sow a seed, because God does not like an angry giver. He likes a cheerful giver. And this is good ground. They are changing lives in the community. They're changing lives outside of the traditional space. And they are making sure that God is reached beyond the walls of church. And if you would, partner with me. Somebody can give $20. Somebody can give $80. There is somebody who can give $500. I'm not trying to put a limit on you. Wherever you are, if you would right now, go to Cash App and go to $TFCATL. $TFCATL, and sow a seed in the good ground. This has been my honor, my privilege. This is the platform you should follow. Share this message. This happens every Monday, and people are being blessed over and over again. Tag a few people. Let them know that the faith community in Atlanta is changing lives. Follow Pastor Christian Smith, and if you would, follow me on every platform at I Am Kervance Ross. You are an essential worker. Wherever you are, while you are homebound, don't get your hair done, don't get tattoos. Operate in your purpose, because God has a purpose that's designed just for you. I love you. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Have a virus-free, drama-free, safe week, and I'll see you when I see you. Peace.